Hello, everybody. March 17th, 2020. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not really in the mood of giving this class tonight. New York City is on the brink of what I believe to be a shutdown because it's coronavirus. I don't know what to think. I think God has a plan. I don't know what that plan is. I'll let it ride, but we're living in scary times. Enough about politics, enough about religion. Let's focus on human resource management. Chapter 6, Selection and Placement of Employees. Our learning objectives for tonight are as follows. Establish the basic scientific properties of personnel selection methods, including reliability, validity, and generalizability, which is something that holds true for any exam or any experiment. Discuss how the particular characteristics of a job, organization, or applicant affect the utility of any test. Describe the government's role in personnel selection decisions, particularly in areas of constitutional law, federal laws, executive orders, and judicial precedent. List common methods used in selecting human resources. Describe the degree to which each of the common methods used in selecting human resources meets demands of reliability, validity, generalizability, utility, and legality. Introduction. Organizations must take the utmost care with how it chooses employees. These decisions impact the organization's competitiveness and every aspect of the job applicant's life. Organizations make sure the decisions they make with respect to who gets accepted or rejected for jobs promote the best interests of the company and are fair to all parties involved. Selection method standards, and we'll go through them. Reliability, validity, generalizability, utility, and of course, legality. It has to be legal, has to fall within the confines of the law. Selection methods. Reliability, estimating the reliability of measurement. Reliability refers to the measuring instrument rather than the characteristic itself. So is the instrument reliable? Are you using a straight ruler to measure with? Correlation coefficient is a measure of the degree to which two sets of numbers are related. For you math lovers, a perfect positive relationship equals +1. A perfect negative relationship equals -1. Test, retest reliability to make sure it's calibrated. Standards for reliability. The required reliability depends in part on the nature of the decision being made about the people being measured. Criterion-related validation, method of establishing validity of a personal selection method by showing a substantial correlation between test scores and job performance scores. Validity coefficient, there's predictive validation and concurrent validation. Concurrent validation, if you look at figure 6.3, we could jump to the long description in the appendix, that little link on the bottom. Concurrent validation involves measuring all current job incumbents on an attribute. Let's say it's the attribute of being a team player. Then measuring all current job incumbents' performance and obtaining a correlation between these two numbers. Predictive validation. We're going to jump to the long description in the appendix. Appendix 2. Predictive validation involves measuring all job applicants on an attribute, hiring some applicants, and rejecting others, waiting for some period of time, measuring all newly hired job incumbents' performance, and finally obtaining a correlation between these two sets of numbers. We move on. Table 6.1, required level of correlation to reach statistical significance as a function of a sample size. And it's mathematical. You look at the sample size on the left and the required correlations on the right. Please look at Table 6.1. for your own knowledge. Selection method standards, slide 5 of 11. Content validation, a test validation strategy performed by demonstrating that the items, questions, or problems posed by a test are a representative sample of the kinds of situations or problems that occur on the job. Best for small sample settings. Generalizability, the degree to which the validity of a selection method established in one context extends to other contexts. Different situations, different samples of people. Validity, generalization. Utility, The degree to which information provided by selection methods enhances the effectiveness of selecting personnel. Utility is impacted by reliability, validity, generalizability. Legality. All selection methods should adhere to existing laws and regulations, laws and legal precedents. Federal legislation, such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 1991, Age Discrimination and Employment Act of 1967, and the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1991. Legality, of course, the Civil Rights Act of 91 protects individuals from discrimination based on race, color, gender, religion, and national origin. Differs from the 1964 Act in 3 areas. Number 1, establishes employers' explicit obligation to establish a neutral appearing selection method, allows a jury to decide punitive damages, explicitly prohibits granting preferential treatment to minority groups. Age Discrimination and Employment Act of 67 outlaws mandatory retirement programs, covers over age 40 individuals, and no protection for younger workers. Americans with Disability Act, otherwise known as the ADA, protects individuals with physical or mental disabilities or with a history of the same. Reasonable accommodations for employees are required by the organization to allow the disabled to perform essential functions of the job, such as somebody has a hearing issue and the person requires a handset that amplifies the sound. That will be a reasonable accommodation. An employer need not make accommodations that cause undue hardship, such as installing equipment that is above and beyond what is considered to be normal. If a person needs his own special elevator, I'm just using that as an example. Obviously, it's a hyperbole, but if someone would need a special elevator or some crazy expensive piece of equipment, that would not be required. Restriction on pre-employment inquiries. We're going to talk about different types of selection methods. We'll talk about interviews, application blanks, references, background checks, physical ability tests, cognitive ability tests, personality inventories, work samples, and honest tests and drug tests. Selection interviews should be structured, standardized, and focused on goals oriented to skills and observable behaviors. Interviewers should be able to quantitatively rate each interview. Interviewers should have a structured note-taking system that will aid recall to satisfying ratings. Situational interviews confronts applicants on specific issues, questions, or problems likely to arise on the job. Experience-based questions, future-oriented questions. Experience-based questions, table 6.2, for example, motivating employees. Think about an instance. This is what you would ask. Think about an instance when you had to motivate an employee to perform a task that he or she disliked, but that you needed to have done. How did you handle that situation? Resolving conflict. What was the biggest difference of opinion you ever had with a coworker? How did you resolve that situation? Overcoming resistance to change. What was the hardest change you ever had to bring about in a past job? And what did you do to get the people around you to change their thoughts or behaviors? Future-oriented questions. Motivating employees. Suppose you were working with an employee who you knew greatly disliked performing a particular task. You needed to get this task completed, however, and this person was the only one available to do it. What would you do to motivate that person? Example of a motivating employee. Resolving conflict. Imagine that you and a coworker disagree about the best way to handle an absenteeism problem with another member of the team. How would you resolve the situation? Again, it's future-oriented. Here's the situation. This happens in the future. How would you and your coworker handle it? Overcoming resistance to change. Suppose you had an idea for a change in a workplace procedure that would enhance quality, but some members of your work group were hesitant to make the change. What would you do in that situation? Types of selection methods, references, application blanks, and background checks. Reference checks are weak predictors of future job success. I can tell you that personally. Many times I look back at the people that I had to let go of in the past, and they passed their reference checks beautifully, but when it came down to actually working, it was a disaster. Background information from applicants is low cost and useful. Educational information not always valid, and also there's something called resume fraud. Okay, physical ability tests, coordination, balance, flexibility, cardiovascular endurance. This is something that's very predictive. For example, you're a fireman and they have to test your ability to climb up that ladder with a certain amount of load on your back. Lifeguard, can you swim with a person back to shore Those are physical ability tests. If you don't pass it, it's not like I'm discriminating against you. You just don't have the qualifications. You're required to do certain things. Cognitive ability tests, verbal comprehension, quantitative ability, reasoning ability, your math skills, all that other stuff goes into cognitive. These have adverse impact on some minority groups who may not have had access to certain education. This is known as race norming. Personality inventory is the big five: an extroversion, adjustment, agreeableness, conscientiousness, always being on top of things, and openness to experience. So let's look at 6.3, which goes through all five: extroversion, sociable, gregarious, happy-go-lucky, friendly, assertive, talkative, expressive; adjustment, emotionally stable, non-depressed, secure, content. That's good. I'll take that. Agreeableness, courteous, trusting, good-natured, tolerant, cooperative, forgiving. Conscientiousness, dependable, organized, persevering, thorough, achievement-oriented. Openness to experience, curious, imaginative, artistically sensitive, broad-minded, and playful. Personality inventories continued: emotional intelligence, self-awareness, knowledge of one's strengths and weaknesses, self-regulation, the ability to keep disruptive emotions in check, self-motivation, the ability to motivate oneself and persevere in the face of obstacles. Empathy, the ability to sense and read emotions in others. Social skills, the ability to manage the emotions of other people. Personality inventories, validity in terms of predicting job performance is higher when scores are taken from other people. People tend to lack insight into their own abilities. Personalities vary across contexts. It is easy to fake traits on tests. Work samples can vary greatly, may include a role play, interactive videos, simulations, and competitions. Since tests are job-specific, generalizability is low. Tests are expensive to develop, used in assessment centers, which assess many people. Honesty tests and drug tests. Polygraph Act of 1988 banned the use of polygraph tests from most private companies. Paper and pencil honesty testing attempts to assess the likelihood that employees will steal, and also test social conformity, conscientiousness, and emotional stability. Continuation, drug use tests tend to be reliable and valid, may represent an invasion of privacy, an unreasonable search and seizure, or a violation of due process. Tests should be administered systematically to all applicants applying for the same job, not one over the other. Testing is likely to be more defensible, with safety hazards associated with failure to perform. Test results should be reported to applicants, who should have an avenue to appeal. And, of course, the end of this presentation are all the appendices that we went through. Thank you very much for joining tonight. And again, I'm sorry we didn't have class in class. I just feel that it's just all the emotions are just going through my head. I'm not afraid. I just needed to be able to just do this in a non-class context. So again, my apologies if we didn't have the interaction that we usually have. But in any case, have a good night. Be safe, be healthy, be happy. Thank you for joining.